Welcome to Meg's Mysteries. This story is The Gravedigger. Death is not so scary. The dead can't hurt you, or can they? I made my living digging graves. I wouldn't say I got rich at it until I took another approach. I worked overtime. My name is Joseph O'Connell, digger to my friends. I've been at this job for many years. I started early in the 1800s with the first deadly outbreak in New York. It was 1832. 3,000 New Yorkers died, mostly the working class, in lower Manhattan. I was only 14, and it was the only job around. They were desperate for gravediggers. I got used to the dead then. It was just a job. Didn't pay much, but as the years went by, I stuck to it, and I made it pay off for me. I took another spin on overtime. At first, I was only burying the sick from the outbreak, and after that, I just stayed on. It was a job no one else wanted, and I was always on call. That's one good thing you can count on, people dying. I got a job at a funeral home for the upper class. None of them wanted that job. They didn't want to get their hands dirty. Only the working class do that sort of job. I noticed that they dressed and cleaned up their dead and put fancy clothes and jewelry on them. That was so tempting. I discovered I can easily take off the clothes and jewelry. They didn't need that anymore. And I was the last one to see them, so no one would be the wiser. As I always say, you can't take it with you. That's my motto. So I helped myself, getting richer by the dig. What I didn't want, I kept. And then I sold the stuff that I didn't need. Someone always bought fine clothes, no questions asked. The jewelry was so easy to sell. I made a pretty penny. Not too bad for a night's work. I started dressing in fine clothes, and after hours I cleaned myself up and I traveled with the higher class in their circles. I found out if you dress the part, people will accept you, and you can get into places that poor working class slobs can't. On one of my nights on the town, I stopped at a classy gentleman's club, where all the rich gentlemen go. They sip their brandy by the fireplace, smoke cigars, and play cards. Then they brag about how much money they have. I was dressed in my finest suit, rings and gold pocket watch that I took earlier that month from a wealthy gent. I was playing cards with some of the younger members. Then a young man just started staring at me. He said, "Where'd you get that ring?" I said it was a family heirloom. I wasn't lying, but it wasn't my family's. He said, "My dear man, it looks like my father's ring. How do you explain that?" I said, "I can't believe you're accusing me of stealing." He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, but we just buried him last month. It can't be his. It was buried with him. I'm so sorry. It just looks so much like his ring." Boy, that was close, but I was free, so I thought. I took out my pocket watch and said, "Okay, it's time for me to leave. No harm done." Would you know it? Another man jumped up. "Hey, that's my dead uncle's pocket watch. I know it anywhere. How'd you get it?" Well, I'll tell you, I never moved so fast in my life to get out of there. I barely escaped. They chased me after me, and I was too fast for them. Cops were called, but I was long gone. I better be more careful in the future where I wear my accessories. So during the day, I was just Digger Joe, doing my usual job. And at night, I cleaned up and rubbed elbows with the best of them. But I was much more careful now what I wore and where. Don't wear something to a place it can be noticed or the town that you got it from. So I traveled around a lot. I have a lot of money now, but I still need more, so I came up with another plan. a new, easier way of getting the job done. I'll do my research ahead of time, and I started reading the obituaries of the wealthy. They were all dying all the time, so I would find a wealthy, dearly departed man or woman. It didn't matter to me. They all had something worth stealing on them that I could use or sell. I would read all about them, then go show my respects to the family and go to the viewings. Most of them were at the family homes. I can get a good read on how wealthy they were and give the family my heartfelt condolence and see the corpse up close, how they're dressed and with what. Most of them had some kind of jewelry on them or something I could sell. Then I would find out where they were being interred. I would go to the said funeral home and get the job as a gravedigger. Only a select few liked that job, and I was the best. I would dress down and play the role. I was always hired just before the interment of the wealthy man or woman. It was a perfect scheme. Then they were being buried, and I knew where they were. So I stripped them of their clothes and personal effects and made off with whatever I choose to take. No one was there to check. I was always the last one to see them before they're buried for good. They didn't need the things anymore anyway. This was so easy. I was making hundreds of dollars or more with their valuables. It was a shame just to bury them with their treasures. That's no use to them anymore. I traveled all around selling items I stole, and I kept what I wanted. This was a great living. I kept on the move. That's the thing. Every place I go, I'm always in demand. And I read the newspapers. That was like my Bible. I read all the death articles, like an encyclopedia, always doing my homework. In my younger years, I traveled and made a good living, but now I'm in my 30s, old for these days. So I traveled to Boston from New York. I needed to be where the old money was. This time was different. I was getting older, and I was looking to retire. I had plenty of money and things, and I wanted to settle down. And in the 1800s, 30 was an old man. The life expectancy was 30 to 40 average. I wouldn't say I had a hard life, but it was time to make a plan for my future. I never married and had no kids. I never wanted to settle down. Especially in my line of work, I was always on the move. But maybe for my advancing years, a wife wouldn't be so bad. Maybe I can find a widow or spinster. I wouldn't have to love them. They would just be thankful for me marrying them, and they can take care of me in my old age. Just one more big job, and I'll start looking to settle down. I read about a family with plenty of old money, the Ravenhurst of Boston, who just lost a young daughter, their only child. I bet they will dress her up in her finest and put all her jewelry on to impress the viewers. That's what rich families do. Even in death, they show off their wealth. Just like I thought, I snuck into the viewing. It was in their mansion. Boy, were they rich. I made believe I knew the daughter. I met her in Europe when she was traveling abroad. The rich send their daughters off for their season to get an education and to meet eligible young rich men. I heard some old ladies talking. That's how she caught the influenza and died. She was always sickly. I paid my respects and saw her. She was beautiful and dressed in a beautiful gown and a diamond and emerald necklace, earrings and ring to match. I felt bad. She was so young and beautiful. But a job is a job, and I couldn't resist. At the funeral, I had a bit of luck. The father dropped dead at the gravesite, a heart attack or heartbreak from burying his only beloved daughter. The mother is now a wealthy widow. I can get in good with her later. Who could resist a younger man who takes an interest in an old, wealthy widow? But for now, I have 2 special jobs to finish. I'll do the girl tonight and see where the old gentleman will be interned later date. I'll get the job to bury him and see what he will offer up. Stylish finery and gold watch will do just fine. Plans change for the better. I got a 2-for-1 with this job, and maybe a chance to get in good with the wealthy widow. So I dressed down again and got the job to bury the girl. I had interviewed ahead of time with the funeral director, who was short of help, and that was to my advantage. I got the job. That night, I was on my own. It was a dark night, and the only light was the full moon and my lantern. Kind of eerie for some, but this was my job and I was used to it. This felt a little different because she was buried in the afternoon. I had dug the grave ahead of time, like usual, and they lowered her into it. That's when her father fell dead. They made me bury her. I didn't have a chance to open the coffin and retrieve the jewels because all the guests were in shock. They all left and the director stayed, so I wasn't alone with the body, like usual. The family and visitors left in a hurry, so shocked at the father's untimely death. He just dropped on her casket. So I had to go that night and dig her up. I saw the gravestone, Lily Ravenhurst. She was only 17. So sad. I unburied her and hit the coffin. I had to jump down and pry it open. She looked like she was just sleeping. I just stared at her, but a job is a job. I started to get her jewels. I had to pry the ring off her cold fingers, and as I was taking the diamond and emerald necklace off, she opened her eyes and screamed, and she grabbed my throat. She was dead, wasn't she? Well, like I said before, the dead can't hurt you. Boy, was I wrong. I dropped down dead right on top of her. They found my dead body the next day. They found my hand on her necklace and her dead cold hands on my throat. I guess you can say, scared to death will be on my death certificate. And that was my end.